You know, some cars are just designed in a boardroom, but others, the really special ones, they're born from a quiet rebellion. Today, we're diving into the secret story of an absolute icon, the Volkswagen Golf GTI. This is the story of how a few passionate people defied the ordinary and changed everything.
Okay, so let's paint a picture. It's the mid-1970s. The oil crisis is in full swing, and that meant cars had to be one thing: practical. They were economical, sure, but they were also just overwhelmingly boring. Excitement? Fun? That was a luxury nobody thought the world could afford anymore. Or at least, that's what most people thought.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did a secret after-hours project by just a handful of engineers lead to a whole new kind of car? In an era where performance was basically a bad word, how did they pull this off?
All right, so to really get this, you have to understand what Volkswagen was dealing with. They were completely obsessed with one massive task: replacing the iconic Beetle. I mean, talk about pressure. The Golf was their big bet. A safe, modern, practical car for everyone. A sports car? Seriously? That was the last thing on their minds.
And this is what's so fascinating. The view from the top floor was crystal clear. The Golf had to be about economy and reliability. Full stop. The idea of a faster, sportier version, to them, it wasn't just a bad idea, it was a risky distraction from the most important job they had.
But, and this is where the rebellion really starts, a few employees saw something else. These were the gearheads, the motorsport fanatics. They looked at the Golf's brand new lightweight chassis and thought, wait a minute. They saw a hidden potential that the executives completely missed. The perfect recipe for a car that was both practical and an absolute blast to drive.
So what do you do when you can't get official approval? You go rogue. What began as a what-if conversation after work quickly turned into a secret project. Its internal code name was EA195, but its mission was simple: build the sport Golf. Now, this wasn't hatched in some sterile boardroom. No way. The whole plan came together over beers at the home of VW's head of press, a guy named Anton Conrad. Back in 1974, he got a few buddies together, and that's where the conspiracy began, to build the car they wanted to drive, whether the company knew about it or not. And here they are, the GTI Group. Think of them as the architects of this brilliant little subversion. You had Anton Conrad, the visionary who hosted the meetings. Alfons Lohenberg was the lead engineering muscle. And maybe most important of all, Hermann Hoblitzl, a board member who gave them just enough cover to keep the whole thing from getting shut down. It was the perfect team for the perfect secret mission.
Okay, so they had the team. But how do you actually build a secret car? Well, you get creative. They had to be super resourceful, basically scavenging parts and testing out ideas completely off the books. This is how they forged the DNA of a legend.
Their first attempt had a standard VW engine with a carburetor, making around 100 horsepower. It was okay, fun but not a game changer. The real breakthrough came when they decided to raid the company parts bin. They borrowed the much more advanced 110 horsepower fuel-injected engine from an Audi 80 GTI. And boom, that one move took the sport Golf from a neat little project to a serious performance car.
And if you want to know just how unconventional this project was, get this. The designer who came up with the GTI's most iconic interior details, her previous job was designing chocolate boxes. I'm not kidding. Gunhild Liljeqvist brought this totally fresh perspective, and it was absolutely crucial to giving the GTI its unique personality. So that famous tartan plaid upholstery, she got the idea from a trip to London. And the legendary golf ball gear knob, that was her too. A stroke of pure genius. You put that together with the red stripe on the grille and the black wheel arches from the chief designer, and suddenly you have a look that is instantly, unmistakably GTI. It's a look that's lasted for almost 50 years. All right, the secret couldn't last forever. They had a finished car, and it was just too good to keep under wraps. Now came the hard part, convincing a very skeptical management team to actually build the thing. This was the moment that would spark a revolution.
So in early 1975, they took a deep breath and showed the prototype to the board. And guess what? The car was so good that the CEO himself gave it the green light. But, and this is a big but, it was a very cautious yes. They agreed to show it at the Frankfurt Motor Show, but only planned to build a tiny number of them, just enough to break even.
5,000. That was the number.
The entire plan was to build just 5,000 cars. That was it. That's all they thought they could sell of this little passion project. Well, the public had other plans. The reaction was absolutely explosive. That initial goal of 5,000, they ended up building over 461,000 of the first-generation GTI. It wasn't just a hit, it was a full-blown phenomenon.
And that right there is the real legacy. The GTI proved for the first time that you could have your cake and eat it too. You could get sports car fun in a practical, affordable car you could use every day. It didn't just join a market category, it literally invented one. The whole idea of the hot hatch, it exists because of this car.
And you know, a car that started as a secret rebellion could have just been a flash in the pan, but not the GTI. It went from rebel to benchmark. It became the icon that every other car company would spend the next 50 years trying to copy.
You can see its incredible staying power right here. The first one, the M1, just lit up the world in '76. Then the M2 in '84 brought us the awesome 16-valve engine. And yeah, there were a couple of generations that kind of lost their way. But the M5 in 2004 was seen as this brilliant return to the original formula. And now, can you believe it? We're coming up on its 50th anniversary.
I mean, just look at that number. Over 2.4 million GTIs produced. That is staggering. And sure, it's been imitated constantly, but if you ask any real enthusiast, they'll tell you that nothing has ever quite captured that perfect mix of fun and practicality like the original.
So what's the big takeaway here? I think the story of the GTI is about so much more than just a car. It's proof that an affordable, everyday thing can be exciting, that it can bring you joy. And maybe more than anything, it's a story about how a small group of passionate people with a bit of a rebellious streak can completely change the world.
At its heart, the GTI came from a simple refusal to accept that practical had to equal boring. It was a total rebellion against the ordinary, and it defined an entire class of car. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What will that same rebellious spirit inspire in the next 50 years?